Hello everyone and welcome to Pyanodons Mods. This is Otaku's Showboat and today we are at last going to be discussing nexelit or processing yet again. If you have been enjoying these tutorials and these updated tutorials thus far, please be sure to do all of the engagement and social stuff below the video. I do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Otaku Showboat. You can, of course, support Pyanodons Mods development at patreon.com/Pyanodon, and you can, of course, support me at patreon.com/Otaku Showboat. So, nexelit has undergone minor adjustments over the course of time, especially since the last time we met. This time, of course, we are going to be discussing numbers as we go along. So, as per usual, let us begin by looking at the nexelit processing techs. The first tech at Red Science is going to give you access to creating nexelit out of tailings, which, for the purposes of this video, we are basically going to ignore this as a way of getting the nexelit. I will talk a bit about this, but we are not going to take this into account in terms of math involved. I will leave that to you as to how you get your raw nexelit in the first place. You get access to cleaning it and then casting it directly into plates, though do note that from the start of the game, as we will see here shortly, you can just do raw nexelit into plates like that. That's just part of what you can do at the beginning of the game, but that you can't actually get nexelit until you get this tech. So do keep that in mind. Now, at stage 2, at Green Science, you will get access to the nexelit mine, which will be very important to you once you are able to make it. But in particular, you can go all the way up to find nexelit powder and do molten casting of nexelit. At this point, you also get access to the most powerful of the Pie Suite tiles that are added. This gives you the 240% walking speed bonus, which I believe is the highest of all of the walking speed bonuses for all of various tile types. So do keep that in mind. Some people, however, do not like the way that this particular tile looks. Too bad. It gives 240. It's the only one that gives 240. The aluminium tile gives like 210 or something. So even though it's a lot easier to make, it's still not the best, quote unquote. At level 3, at Chemical Science, you do not gain access to high-grade processing of nexelit. You get stage 4, pulp stage 4 processing into your molten nexelit, and it's at Utility Science that you will gain access to high-grade reduction and sintering. And do note that at this current point in time, any high-grade into sintered recipes have been completely removed from the game. They are now the former recipes. So now your only choice is to reduce high grade and then sinter the reduced. You can't sinter high grade anymore. It was superfluous. It's gone. It was terrible. You should never consider doing that in the first place. Anyway, let us begin, of course, with the direct casting of nexelit into plates. And as I mentioned, you are never going to likely do this because you will have access, guaranteed, have access to the raw nexelit into clean nexelit process by the time you even have raw nexelit in the first place. So do keep that in mind. You will be doing this process, converting 3 to 1 your ore into plates by washing it, cleaning your nexelit, and giving you tailings in the process. So this is why I'm not truly considering the first step, quote unquote, first step in this process as we go forward, because making the nexelit out of tailings is, of course, an option. This does feed back a lot of tailings, and as you'll see once we get into our next processing step of the powdered casting, you'll see why it ends up actually producing an absolute ton of tailings, and it's able to feed itself back quite a bit. You don't actually need that much extra tailings production to feed this if your goal is like 15 per second. Or, of course, you can mega mine it by the time you get into your circuit 2s and stainless steel and such. You can absolutely do that and get lots and lots and lots of ore. And this production line is available to you through my Discord server, of course. I have that string shared through that. At Green Science, you do get access to the first molten nexelit recipe, and this will give you, without hot air, it's about a 1-to-1 ratio. It should be perfectly 1-to-1 ratio without hot air, but now you can do hot air casting. You should absolutely always do hot air casting when you have the chance to do so. So make sure you do it. It's a 25% bonus in terms of the output of your plates. So, we take our raw nexelit, we have washed it into clean nexelit. From here, you have to then screen it. Well, you have to crush it into grade 1 and then screen that grade 1 into 2, 3, and rejects. So you start by crushing that cleaned nexelit into grade 1, giving you stone that you have to deal with, and then you screen that grade 1 into grade 2, 3, and rejects. The rejects, and just note the throughputs here, this is way more than a yellow belt. Way more than a single yellow belt that you'll have to deal with here. These rejects will get impact crushed back down into grade 1, and that will loop back grade 1. That will loop back the grade 1. And then the secondary crusher will crush the grade 2 into grade 3. So that combined grade 3 between these two steps then gets scrubbed in an inordinate amount of scrubbers. In so many scrubbers. In way too many scrubbers. With an absolute ton of sand to make your actual powder in a 1-to-1 ratio. The amount of sand here has been nerfed over time, or buffed, or however you would say it. The value needed for sand has been reduced over time. It used to be way more than this, but as you can see, it's still quite a bit. It's still quite a slow recipe by comparison to the rest of the factories in here. You still need a ton of scrubbers, which is a shame. These type of things are going to be fixed over time, I would hope. But yeah, as you can see here, there is a little problem still in regard to nexelit processing once you get up to fine nexelit powder. Note that you will need fine nexelit powder for other things in Pi Alien Life. You will actually need the fine nexelit powder for other things. If I say filter by ingredient on the fine nexelit powder we can see in Pi Alien Life, you need it for the more advanced Schrodinger antelopes. You need it to make Schrodinger antelope towards the end, or at the end of the game, I should say. You need antelope to get into utility science, technically, but these recipes you're probably going to be looking at more at utility going into space science. So do bear that in mind. You will need some spare nexelit powder for Schrodinger antelope in Pi Alien Life. So you have to do this. That's my point. This is a required process to basically a required process. Like the Schrodinger antelope recipes, you have your choice as to how far you want to go with that. But by the time you get to that point, it's like, why not do the antiviral recipes, etc. So to get the higher output of them, it can be really tedious on the Schrodinger antelope if you don't do the most advanced recipes that you have available to you at the given point in time, and those will require the nexelit powder. But yeah, just looking at these numbers here, Mark 1 is what you'll have access to when you can technically do this. So to process 15 or just 15, just 15, or you need 60 scrubbers, which is a little insane considering it was 15, 8, 17, 25, 5, 60. This needs to be cut down to 20 by 2/3, at least, or at the very least half. I mean, yeah, this recipe needs to move faster. It's also a lot of sand. So my point is that the sand here, this 100 sand, is going to produce a lot of tailings. A lot of tailings. A lot of tailings with 100 sand. Not enough, I think. Not enough to give you the full 15 per second of ore. Even with this 500 here. Not enough for 15. It's like, it's a few units for every full throughput pipe of the stuff. But yeah, it's a pretty big amount that does get fed back. Pretty big ratio that gets fed back from the tailings if you are using those tailings to make additional or supplementary raw nexelit. So do keep that all in mind as you are planning out your nexelit builds. And then from here, once you've scrubbed your grade 3 into fine nexelit powder, you can then use an advanced foundry with borax to convert it to molten, and then you can cast the molten through hot air with sand castings, and yeah, there you go. 17.5 plates per second for a 15 ore in. If you are not hot air casting, of course, this would be 15. Pretty sure. Pretty sure. Around 1-to-1. So the next phase that you get access to, the next step, is at blue science. So the blue chemical science step that you can max out on will be this pulp stage 4. And from here, it is, shall we say, quite expensive. This is quite expensive. So you'll take your 20 fine nexelit powder and 40 centrifugal pans. So again, with this recipe is way too slow side of things. A whole bunch of centrifugal pans with an absolutely huge amount of sodium chlorate. Double that, and that's how much salt this uses. Like, this uses 80 per second of salt and a bunch of steam in order to make that much sodium chlorate alone. Syngas, that's free. Glycerol, though, not so free. 500 units of glycerol. Like, if you're doing the collagen recipe, like, 50 units of collagen per second is not going to happen. And if you use the skin recipe, that's also not going to happen. Oleochems is the main way that you're going to end up with glycerol, but are you ever going to end up with 500 units of the stuff spare? Probably not, because that's a ton of lard. It's just not good. It is an obscene amount of glycerol used in Pulp 1. And then, much more reasonable numbers from there on out. Flotation of that Pulp 1 with acetone, but fortunately by the time you can do this, you will have access to the stripped distillates based cumene phenol acetone recipe, which you can see here, that's going to be 50 cumene per second, which, yeah, it's fine. It should be okay. It's going to be like titanium tetrachloride, I think, is the stuff that's used there. That goes into your pulp 2. The pulp 2 will then need 100 organic solvent. That's pretty easy at this point in a leaching station. Into pulp 3, pulp 2 into 3. Pulp 3 will then get flotated in with Armac 12D, 150 per second of the Armac 12D. That's going to be oleochemicals. Hey, look, it's as if there was a plan there, but you need way more glycerol than you need oleochems. And a bunch of ammonia to do this. That's going to be a lot of ammonia, actually. That's going to be a lot of ammonia, as well as quite a few oleochems to get that much Armac. D12, or 12D, excuse me. And that makes you your Pulp 4 with some tailings that do cycle back. And then a whole bunch of borax in Advanced Foundries to get your Molten. And then you can cast that Molten with Hot Air Casting into a lot of nexelit plates. So, just to compare, this one's 1-to-1-ish with plus 25%. This one's a lot more than that. This gives you 50 plates per second from your 15 in. So, it's a huge gain. Is that gain worth the cost? Probably not. Probably not. It's bad enough to do the sand build in the first place, but then to do all the 80 per second salt and all of the everything on glycerol, yeah, no. No, that the glycerol I think is the primary killer of this and beyond. It just kills everything else beyond here. Specifically at this point in the game. Later, when you do get easier, quote unquote, easier access, once you've grown into better, faster recipes to get skin and to get the collagen from skin, by the way, uh, once you've sort of grown into that production capacity, then this becomes a lot more manageable to use. So once you get into utility science, that's when I would say definitely go up through the sintering process. Now, at utility science, you get access to high grade as well as reduced from high grade as well as sintering. So we'll have a look at each of these in turn. So from our pulp 4, you will need to electrolyze your pulp 4 with some aluminium, graphite, and a bunch of iron oxide to make a refined nexelit pulp plus a nexelit slurry. Both of these combine together, making each 8 high-grade nexelit to go into the last step here. They will make an even amount together. You will wet scrub the slurry with boric acid, as well as a fair amount of methanol, pretty large amount of methanol there, and then it gets the refined nexelit pulp is evaporated directly into the high grade nexelit, and that combines and makes a bunch more, not that much more, another 18 plates per second gain compared to the previous step. That's pretty decent. Just bearing in mind also this is 25% more for doing the hot air casting versus the not hot air casting. We could also reduce that high grade, that 16 high grade, by adding the usual sodium sulfate and diesel, drastically reducing the amount of borax required to make the molten nexelit in this case. That is pretty dramatic. So if you're at, well, you're at utility science, so you absolutely have the ability to make the direct reduction plants as well as the center units by this point, so keep that in mind. You will then have significantly more plates than the previous step. Like this is a huge boost during the roost. But of course, you also get access to sintering, which sintering is lime plus syngas plus some solid fuel and pressured air. There's no reason not to do sintering when you get access to it because all of this is pretty simple to make. Lime is Coke. Lime is basically Coke, plus limestone, which is water. So yeah, that is much more borax than reduced, but it's not going to matter in the end. And yeah, 133.4 on the output of your nexelit there. So yeah, it's definitely going to be worth it to go up to sintering. I would say, because by the time you reach that point in the game where you can get to sintering, where you unlock the tech, it becomes a quite significantly easier to get into the glycerol for this. But otherwise, I would say skip completely the chemical science phase of it. You're gonna stick with powdered. You might actually stick with powdered through the entirety of your game, but so be sure to keep that in mind. That you'll likely end up scaling up your powdered step. Excuse me, likely be scaling up your powdered step pretty significantly over the course of your playthrough to even get into utility science in the first place, and yeah, you're probably not going to be needing a bunch more nexelit at utility science anyway. So with all that said, I would very much like to thank you all for watching. This has been Otaku Showboat. If you've enjoyed this tutorial and the series thus far, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you are so inclined, I do stream at Twitch at twitch.tv/Otaku Showboat, so you can leave a follow if you haven't already over there as I stream various Factorio stuffs. You can support Pyanodon's mods development at patreon.com/Pyanodon, as well as myself at patreon.com/Otaku Showboat. I will, of course, see you all on the next one.